Hello, I'm not a lawyer. Thank God, because I recorded lawyers originally. Still, we can record with our eyes. Black pupils, we have black pupils' whites of eyes. You don't leave that from the subject. You don't leave it out. People have been changing and faking what others say when they speak about predicate acts and about things tied to people putting predicate acts right into databases. Predicate acts with facts note, wire crime rolls, mail crime rolls, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrong, whole World Trade Center predicate acts. Connecticut's Channel 3 News, WFSB, they attached me to fake conversations with themselves and with others and about the World Trade Center attack. They attached others to fake to change communications about that. They have roles of other natures of organized crime to acts in those same stories and collusion slash S. Increasingly, they have people tied to a Claudia Scalora and a Sebastian Scalora and others in the other extended families tied to them with different last names who are increasingly involved with planting evidences on all sides of my house with them. I don't know where they live. And the police have been switching names with them and forbidding, pretending they show writing, but they don't, and they put fake things in databases. They have judges, family members, and prosecutors, family members associated with a Rixie and Faglione and with a who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, Timothy O'Brien and a Ray Colo and a Rick Cianfaglio, and they have a Brian Silver and a Leahy family and people with the name Lombardo and Christopher Walters, people tied to Christopher Walters and his neighbors, and their roles with intelligence, foreign and domestic, since they were kids, with people since before they were born, increasingly attaching private schools, kids, and kids that don't even know each other to fake natures of ties to each other as collusion slash S, but people stacking predicate acts in the databases at the campuses. I recorded some black KKK, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, Italian theme, increasingly collusions with identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake ties to me, fake natures of ties to me, and wire crimes of Weathersfield police, falsified police reports, roles, foreign and domestic military, as ones involved with predicate acts with Saudi attackers, forcing them roles, like how one of the Mendez brothers forced one of the Saudis to collusions with them, attaching me to fake conversations with him at the Weathersfield police station. He uses more than one name. He has a brother who uses the name Eric Mendez. Also recorded involved with the principal upskirt as one of the ones that forced that. A whole bunch of people at New Britain Superior Court involved with that. Increasingly with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence of Corrupt Organizations Act, too. Then James Comey. And these are people increasingly with Cuba. There are people from like Central Connecticut State University has roles with people from Cuba, people from all these different countries around the world, including Russians and Ukraine. Increasingly involved with predicate acts against me with people and from Weathersfield into branch. I don't state corrections offices, now the state judicial branch offices of Connecticut. They have a whole bunch of wire crime acts and methods. But to discern this, you have to not change and fake what people say about what predicate acts, like WFSB attached me to fake conversations with them about the World Trade Center attack, attached me to fake conversations with others about it too. And people that I never even had conversations with. They're forging names of doctors too, doctors and ones with badges and gavels who have been speaking fake things in their delusions into records with the news locations and the difference of the intelligence at their locations or next to them criminally foreign influence. Tactically delusions rotten haven't been exploited. These are increasingly people with the name Colo and Tomorrow and people tied to them and a Lance Cuddy. I never had a word of conversation with Lance Cuddy. Increasingly, people tied to a Lance Cuddy, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He's involved with them with child offenders years apart and with medical and sexual offenders and people associated with the FBI all along Park Street and involved with the Daryl Sullivan, also with the wire crimes and sequence shifts and people involved with Saudis, forcing the Saudis too. All exceptions too. But this is also important because there are other sides that are making that only capable. There's a hype, in other words, there's a breaching method that had the north and south sides with slavery. And no one knows that clear, not because they didn't do their homework, because the books were criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. And the location /S, as everywhere the human species is now since some ancient times, and then further at the campuses, further at the database identities of relativity /relativity store. So then further at the campuses, the Constitution is still abridged, the Republic's still abridged. It's campus's system. The functions by that, which is requiring pantheism too. Not about many gods, about that one identity of hyper invisible but still discernible. That shows that the other species' bodies didn't invent why all the different species' bodies have quality aspects in nature, distinct but also non-distinct, and simultaneous, but also per that further hyper simultaneous, not us nor them, but everything anyway. Any prey, vaccines. So A through Z, I'm on your side as the human species body of individual bodies. The suits and ties, counters, exceptions. No one had representation, including your representatives. This is not about politics. This is about getting the predicate acts back. Who denies that black people's whites of eyes and having had other assigned, communicated. The nature communicates with that. Is about a predicate acts with facts method. Who disbelieves. I'm not even a lawyer, not a police form, not a judge. We have black people's whites of eyes. We could discern that they were abused since they were kids. You guys had other communicated for James Madison and for other countries. You guys had other communicated for your founders than they communicated. Part of the reason was because it was already entrenched. There were internationally monitored conversations and differences themselves used remotely. And then further, their own countries divided by the international companies. And overt criminal enterprises, terrorists, only capable of being because there's differences racket. See, we have the worse than war crimes. We have black people, we have the same color eyes. We have the same colors eyes. Or with the same color eyes. You know, whatever. At the same time where we have exceptions. With the exceptions of nature, but the same colors are white and black. And nature communicates with this, right? Where nature's showing us too. Its identity to the extent we can discern, its identity relationship to itself. Now, this is distinct from calling it God, because then you're talking about invisible but still discernible. You're talking about something that can be named. The hyper invisible but still discernible. It goes with in other words, it's not just that we could discern its identity to an extent. It's a complete identity relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that is why, how even fish have two eyes that look so similar to humanity's. We could ignore how nature communicates about positive and negative distinctly from how our people do. There are criminal and citizens' natures of positive treatments. There are criminal and citizens' natures of economies and economic treatments. Preventative of the communications of our founders regarding such, forced upon us, who had nothing. And our founders didn't have free speech. And they were plural, as James Madison. And there are proofs that Native Americans, to an extent, were behind him in his plan to counter-extort at 13 key locations and to force the other third of our founders. There's the third that's entirely on their own. Native Americans are our founders. A pure sense of that breaching method's presence here, there, everywhere. You know, obstructed only because of the campus of the ground below our feet is tactically nature too, hyper additionally, as what forced everyone on to value nature systems tactical from what could be defended syntactically and afford to be, let alone to protract. Short words with convictions proper by what nature communicates, like black people's rights. That's how it was even left out of the subject. So serious, like slavery. like the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Now there was and you see you have people with the music playing in the background. Well, Dan, this is the thing. Well, it's a complicated, and we want to keep the viewers watching. In other words, you guys are changing and faking what people say. When we mention predicate acts, you're changing our communications, our very words, as collusion slash S with agencies and with courts that have been stacking predicate acts with facts in the. You know how kind of sick things that the people with the prisons have been involved with. They've been involved with killers before, with the spots of the body numbing spots, even if it was made up with other natures of organized crime and predicate acts methods since before they were caught. And then while they're in their jails to hold, like in Sandy Hook, to hide that. Sandy Hook intelligence is increasingly leaking things, and we're going to go more and more deeper into it. And people, there are lawyers and people associated with this, with the security and things in military, foreign and domestic, criminally foreign influence at the Connecticut Capitol, and next to it, a whole bunch of people tied to those spots too. There's a Charlie Bowes. I don't know. A woman said it was his sister. It might be a judge too, because a whole bunch of judges and prosecutors involved with predicate acts at Old Town Cafe, with the FBI and with other countries, and people involved with child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart, first forced, and a whole bunch of fire departments, family members had to run in to hide live progressions at the same time. It's apparently that maybe that's probably because they're with, using the right to lie tied to what they're doing with nuclear energy creation and fire departments with that. I don't know, but they have the also differences rackets. Like we have black pupils, we have the same color eyes, and nature showing us about similarity and difference, while we have different color eyes at the same time. And nature showing us where and how it's everybody, even if you make something up. It's volume, it's hyper volume science is inseparable, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously slash hyper something from the finite parts, from the order of the finite, as the order of the finite, as the difference of that, as the active group, as the progressive definition of progressive, like how we are shown the identity of all space slash existence, that would like hyper invisible but still discernible, where we could discern the how it invented how all the species are distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous slash hyper simultaneous. How it, to the extent we could discern its complete identity relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that is how and why and what we are perceiving, where and how we could discern the value of seasons that are not even here yet, the existence of them as value, too, even if they never get here as value, because the whole world gets, vaporized. I forgot we referred to it that way, but we could all get vaporized because countries A through Z were forced to. All the other countries, too, were forced to be on part of the economies, sickly distinctly forced. And where and how sickly distinct, non-distinctly could have and should have been self-valued by countries A through Z. It is incapable of being discerned by them because of the entrenchments, for example, concentrated with psychiatry too, but interbranch. Tactically delusions wrought too. Criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions wrought summaries of American history, of principles, of reason, of morality, of law, of exceptions. They can't afford to have what's actually recorded discerned. President Kennedy and Fidel Castro, they would have liberated the agricultural, the ground's identity of relationship to itself, hypernative, pure, or we sense. And we're happy to sense because then we just make it more better, hyper perfect, where evolution's fruits and gifts and means from nowhere come. The science of pantheism is led by the hyper singular. Pantheism as an ism to see through isms, even its own, to stay led by how there is a distinct identity of hyper invisible true always. We don't know if we go, but we don't leave out the smallest finite detail. Anyone tries to debate that the ground below our feet, anywhere the human species body is, its identity, the relationship to itself, like with the water and stuff like that, it's all tactically to nature. It's a landscape theater. Its systems abridged from how nature communicates with that. Nature shows us how to cause. You think nature doesn't want us to value, to hunger and thirst, so we have to, walk down. Little kid, how were they? They're thirsty. The sink breaks. They're on the 34th, fourth floor of those buildings in the background of rap videos, and the rappers themselves, prolific people, but they don't know how to put it in words, so they just show you the rap. In other words, and more, the words are being incapable of being made. Because more and more people are defending, blaming other things, others ourselves, for things our founders and that nature itself said to blame on the human fact treatment nature breaching method. Who denies that there's a human fact treatment nature breaching method discernibly manifest with quality aspects of nature of suburbs, let alone and how suburban / urban and urban are manifest? And exception nature and appreciation of such with subject treatments. So predicate acts with facts are the thing here. Increasingly, there are a whole bunch of people tied to a Claudia Scalora and her cousins, like a Joe DeMoro, involved with WFSB and with Fox Connecticut News people and WTNH. A whole bunch of ways, directly and indirectly. Also with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and child defenders, leaders of kids, including child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart, including different natures of abuses of them at the same time. Where and how if people make subject treatments, they change and fake what they say. If it goes against anyone they know of interbranch. In other words, there are a lot of people, but it's less than us. It's a minority used remotely critically foreign influence. But as the names of the people of the sciences, as a certain type of victim / hyper victim predator / hyper predator / hyper victim, hyper predator. I say hyper victim distinctly from victim predator for the same reason the breaching method was. It was not England, Spain, France, the African countries. It was fluent with them. It was using them and their differences and fighting with themselves and defending that and speaking about law and genocide. When did they have integrity to speak about such serious things? And when did you pay attention to who's drafting the such? Like former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act. And these lawyers are punks. They pretend we have to pay for things we don't have to pay for because they want to keep locking subjects apart because everything's too big, or they make simultaneously things too big and too small, and they change and fake everything. There are even roles with the intelligence agencies just putting faked audio and video transcripts. So it's hyper evidentially recorded. Thank God, offensively, the branches of government have been preventing mandated law true, and then pretending they could look at documents. Get it down. In other words, we have to address how they were abused, the people of the law, to even pretend New York City had a fraction of legitimate science speak for them, black pupils. You're going to watch the organized crimes with the psychiatry, tactically delusions raw. I'm not even a doctor. I'm going to delineate their delusions from their criminally foreign influence, fact, treating nature, needs, natures, and souls, and their family members, those of judges and prosecutors and the doctors, putting fake things into databases together and at campuses. You're going to watch. In other words, we don't have no military defense here. Fix the fake World Trade Center predicate acts. See how they went into Afghan too? These are people years before the World Trade Center attack. In other words, get them on paper with the name and sequence And what are they doing? They still with the town offices? What are you doing? Get them on paper. Let's get them on paper. Well, where they get them into branch? They know they hid paper since I was a kid. Man, I just think it's me. These are sick people. Into branch with the state offices, the corrections, and the judicial offices, and the conjunctions to it, like Weathersfield Pizza House there, involved with wire crimes and Weathersfield police refusing to identify themselves. These are intelligence families with judges and their families, but they're with other agencies and police involved with the phone companies too. Collusion/S, putting fake and changed transcripts of phones. You have all kinds of sick people with predicate acting tied to it. People want to talk about act, but let's talk about the predicate acts. Get me off of the fake conversations with you about the World Trade Center attack and about other things and fake ties to me, fake conversations with other people too. You pretended WFSB with your interbranch collusion sources too, involved with your intelligence at your location and next to them. Why do you guys want to start a fight? Let's get it on paper, one name and sequence. Let's go. Let's get the interbranch on the paper with you. Who's going to start? You guys brought it up. And why did you see you recorded yourself at the same time forcing child offenders and rolls with untimely deaths intercities in 1 years apart where there were little scams with that. At the same house involved too. Time use / the people will tell you I never had a conversation with them in my life. In other words, ones that tied to the Cleesa and then how they were put the name Cleesa Lewis on Facebook. The Facebook page of Weathersfield Police with ones with name Shumack with some KKK, Confederate flag theme, Black, Latino, interreligious spots, Jewish, other nutbags with the Christianity and that. In other words. And it's nothing against any of those things just because they're simple. I don't care. But like you got, in other words, I don't deal with the predicate acts they're involved with. The identity theft, fraud, slanders, and their educators. I even had class with a Mark Violet and a Justin Kovinskis. A whole bunch of people next to the campuses, intercities. People at UConn involved next to Trinity College and next to CCSU with some KKK, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, Los Salidos themed. Right on Facebook with the people tied to a police chief Centron 1 year ago. They're recorded and they're his detective. They're recorded fast demonstrated confirmed by my school involved with people with the name Fred Grise and others with predicate acts with little kids with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. When I was a freshman, then they covered that up with a Riley family increasingly involved with the Board of Education, further with sexual and medical offenders of kids, and roles with the differences rackets. That's why there's a problem with the DEI. In other words, the reason there's a problem with diversity and equality is because there's fake sciences. There's fake sciences. These are ones involved with the next to the campuses throughout Hartford, as the ones next to the campuses in Weathersfield and next to Hartford Hospital's campus. All kinds of natures of organized crime with themselves, as the ones with the wire crimes on my street, with the police forms switching and forging names. Fear God, to hide and plot. Let's get them on paper too. There are more with the Secret Service, with Central Connecticut State University, when a president went there years before, too, who made confessions and demonstrations. These are awesome people, intercampuses, like the best campuses in colleges and universities. But increasingly, Central Connecticut State University in the Britain, Connecticut, has roles intercities and intercampuses and intra-campuses, and then between the different campuses with connected families that have been putting predicate acts for their own families against others. These are increasingly people at each of the campuses I went to have roles with federal crimes with foreign and domestic at the same time, including judges and prosecutors with them, like with a Ray Reynolds, foreign and domestic military, as people involved with the Morrow family, increasingly ones involved with the Saudis, with one's name Mendez, further with the principal upskirt nature, people with whitey forensics with the name O'Neill too. They might have gone after Osama and had that information to do that beforehand, had to do that to cover up life aggression. Because Hartford Hospital has roles with the response to the World Trade Center attack as collusions. Connecticut's interbranch and the state offices, corrections offices, judicial branch offices, and conjunctions to it are being used remotely where they have roles of predicate acts with facts methods and differences racketeering and with their educators. Increasingly, this breaching method keeps the interbranch, not just at America, there are proofs, like planting fake ties and natures of ties to strangers, timing where they're going to be, making all sides of issues collusion/s. Also relative to where and how anyone could pretend there's any integrity speaking anywhere. Fix the mandated law. I mean, follow mandated law for the news and for Connecticut interbranch. Get them on paper now. I want a response to the principal's confessions and confirmations to me. These are intercampuses, a whole bunch of people tied to a Detective Samuda too, with some black KKK, Latino theme, Italian theme, sexual and medical offenders of kids, and roles of digital wild crimes and rape threats and calling in sexual things with the business department. Same guy, I'm pretty sure. He's involved now anyway with his roles intercities with the intelligence. Yeah. Watch what you're going to be leaking with East Hartford. You know, we wait. Don't wait to respond to me. Make sure I get a name. Make sure I get a name. Don't hide and plot. I'll rap a lot.